Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's show, I've been waiting for quite some time for the series to develop, and of course, just put aside some time to take on such a monumental and beautiful piece of writing. Now, you guys may remember 02321's work from the Agent series in the woods, and if you enjoy that one as much as I'm sure you're going to love this one as well. But of course, as ever, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. Well, it really does help both the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid Crew. And so, with that aside, let's get into tonight's story. And title: I Work as a PI, Part 4. Let's get straight into that. It blinked as it judged us. Then it moved and the other eye took its place. The face behind the tunnel was so massive, both eyes could not fit behind the entrance at the same time. That didn't make any sense. Besides, the tunnel was filled in with bricks and earth. This thing, whatever it was, simply could not be inside the tunnel based on the massive scale of the new features I did see.
What do we have here? An odd pair, to be sure.
The voice was low and booming. I smelled putrid breath as it spoke, and I forced myself not to react.
An unfinished stone and a human. Not just a human. One that is also unfinished. A human that can never fully be a...
And I felt rage replace my fear of this creature. It took one look at me and saw something I desperately tried to hide and refused to talk about unless absolutely necessary. I was ready to try and kill this thing with my bare hands, but Nick stopped us. Without his face changing, he grabbed the back of my shirt to drag me back when I wasn't even aware I had taken a step forward, ready for a fight.
Don't listen to it. It's only trying to get you worked up. It's in their nature,
he said, but it didn't help me calm down.
What he said, half rock and half human, they're only words.
The creature spoke with a cruel laugh afterwards. Nick, can I borrow your sword? I asked loud enough for the tunnel beast to hear. Nick's sword wasn't visible, but I knew it was there. He wouldn't go on a case trying to find a monster unharmed.
Skylar, please don't kill the bridge troll,
Nick replied in such a matter-of-fact tone it snapped me from my fighting mood. I looked from him to the dark tunnel with only one eye staring back. This massive thing was a troll. I was under a bridge, so that was understandable. I crossed my arms, not happy about not being able to do anything, but I let Nick speak.
We are looking for the one killing homeless men in this city, one of which may have been taken from this park. I was hoping you saw something,
Nick said and gestured towards the bag containing the other jar of eggs in my hand.
I may have, but who cares? They're just trash, not worth the time. At least their death provided some creature some fun.
I felt my neck get hot and wanted to smash the jar of eggs. I didn't know if this thing was just saying things to piss us off or if he really thought like this. If my sister didn't take me in after my parents kicked me out, I might have ended up as these men, only much worse. We both worked ourselves down to the bone to pay rent and have enough to eat. And we got lucky. The men that were killed could have been on the streets for all sorts of reasons that they couldn't control. I was not going to stand and listen to this thing insult 8 people who died through no fault of their own. Nick was also offended, and because of his lack of expression, I didn't know it until he drew his sword, the delicate thing making a musical sound as it appeared. Holding it out, he stared at the tunnel with his eyes blank and hands steady.
If that's the truth, then the same goes for yourself. If those men are trash, only worth entertainment in death, then a troll nobody cares for can provide the same.
We all fell silent. I could feel the air press in around my shoulders, and it suddenly felt hotter than before. It was impossible to read Nick's intentions. I honestly thought he was going to go through with killing it until he placed his sword back into the hilt and it faded from sight.
I brought you eggs in exchange for information, I am looking for the killer of these men. They are not trash. They are people. You are a troll with a terrible personality, but I can still respect you enough to make a basic exchange.
I felt some tension fade at his words. At least those two weren't going to get into a fight. I wasn't expecting the troll to be touched by his words, but rather only thankful he was still alive. When it spoke again, the tone of its voice was softer.
I have nothing better to do all day but watch the ones in the park. It's like bird watching for humans. I saw a man get forced inside a white van and not return. I am unaware if he is one of your victims, but it is the only strange event I have seen with these homeless humans. Some just stop showing up for unknown reasons.
The troll admitted. I wasn't expecting actual useful information from this creature. This didn't fully answer our question, but it did open up our investigation to other ideas. Was someone kidnapping men to feed to a pet monster? Or was there a human-looking beast out there, driving around picking up victims that no one would miss? My train of thought was derailed when the troll spoke again. I squinted as if it was smiling.
I spotted this van a few nights in a row before it took the man. I've seen it again, so maybe it might strike again soon. Give me the other jar and I'll tell you what took these men.
I looked over to Nick, heart beating. Even after everything, I wanted to trust this monster. Then again, with the troll's track record, I wasn't sure if he was telling the truth or just messing with us. Nick took the bag and walked over to set the jar of eggs within reach. Thankfully, the troll wasn't trying to lure Nick into attack him. The eye disappeared and the fingernail took the jar. And we waited, and was positive the creature left before the voice came faintly, as if from a distance.
The one who took them is the most frightening monster on this planet. One not bound by rules and one that has done the most amount of destruction throughout the ages.
And the voice was echoing through the tunnel as the light started to flicker back on. We both stared down into the now empty tunnel, wondering about the parting words of the troll. I didn't understand what kind of creature it was talking about, so I looked over to Nick. Do you know what it meant? I asked.
I have no idea,
he said without a hint of shame. In the end, we needed to camp out and watch the park all night. At least we knew we could be in the right area. If the troll wasn't lying to us, the white van could come prowling down the road, looking for a new target. We sat on the park bench watching the street. Nick was flipping through his notebooks, looking for any sort of clue of what monster we could be facing. And beside ourselves, two men camped out, huddled in piles of dirty blankets, a bit away, but within eyesight. We could watch them and the road at the same time. The night was cool because it was still spring. I should have brought a jacket. After a while, Nick gave up looking for any hints hidden in his notebook. He had a hint of frustration upon his face.
I must apologize for my overreaction earlier,
Nick said, making me raise an eyebrow. That was an overreaction? I gave him a smile, not knowing if he could tell that I was teasing. The dark park made me feel uneasy. An unknown threat was out there, and might not take our meddling lightly. Every time I went on a case with Nick, I was risking my life. Overall, I felt as if it was worth it. I would never reach my goals working the normal jobs that came along. And yawning, I was a little bit surprised that I could be tired and nervous at the same time. Looking back on the day, I realized I really didn't help out in this case at all. I slouched down on the park bench, feeling the same sense of frustration start up in my stomach. And Nick noticed my mood, but didn't look as if he knew how to ask about what was wrong. I don't feel helpful, I said. What happened to your old partner? Did they get a transfer or something? Honestly, Nick hadn't told me much. I really hit the ground running, accepting that things lurked in the night. I didn't have a lot of information and figured it was because all of this was secret government stuff.
She died.
I sat up at his answer. His voice didn't change, but I sensed a shift in his mood. Nick wasn't looking in my direction, or rather, he couldn't bring himself to. Remembering his pink cell phone with all the charms, I felt my arms prickle. It was a phone that should belong to a girl. A memento from his last partner. How recent did this happen? I didn't feel right to ask. "I'm sorry," I said in an awkward tone. He didn't react, just kept staring forwards. Not only was I not helping, just there for a payout, I brought up something uncomfortable, and just as I started feeling awful about sitting next to the agent, he rescued the conversation. "I am glad you're here. I do not wish to be alone so soon after what happened. All the other partners' options are, not ideal. Most would just use me for what I am instead of trying to strike up a conversation. I am not experienced in dealing with others, so I feel as if I may make things difficult for you," Nick said as he finally looked over. "Well, it's scary how nice you are." A confusion fluttered over his face, but he accepted my answer. I wanted to know what Nick was. The troll called him an unfinished stone. It really didn't feel as if I could ask him about it after he mentioned how others would use him for simply being whatever he was. In the future, I would find the right time to sneak the question in. Because I was looking in his direction, I noticed some movements over his shoulder. On reflex, I grabbed him and pulled Nick off the bench, just as a clawed hand darted out from the bush behind the wooden bench. And out from the darkness sprang a lanky, hissing creature. The body long and deformed. Milky white eyes glared at us, and its mouth opened nearly ear to ear. The skin was a sickly grey, and I could see the creature's ribs. One swat of those claws could easily cut us in half. "What the hell is that?" I shouted, startled at the sudden appearance. "A minor creature, not much of a threat," Nick replied with his hand hovering at his waist. I waited for one of us to break the stalemate, and with his sword, Nick could easily take out this thing. However, he was hesitating. The problem was his sword was too powerful. It would dig into the ground and create all sorts of damage wherever he directed his attack. We didn't know if anyone else was camping out in the small area of trees, since earlier today we were told people often did so, instead of sleeping out in the open. One swing of the sword would kill this monster, but also anyone else unlucky enough to be in its way. And the creature acted first. It launched itself off the park bench towards Nick's face with claws out. I was terrified, but still moved. I slammed my shoulder into this creature, knocking it off course and to the ground. I felt bones crack against my shoulder. It scrambled on the ground, making yowling sounds, trying to get back into position to attack again. It arched its back on all fours, ready to bite our faces off, when movement from Nick made it pause. When out from a suit pocket, he pulled out a bag of beef jerky. I stared at him, mouth slightly open. He was appeasing a twisted creature made of nightmares, with a snack. And tossing it in front of us, the thing darted over, taking the bag in its wide mouth. Without taking its eyes off us, it backed up and under the bench. Somehow, the thing sank into the dark shadow of the bench, leaving us alone. "What the fuck?" I whispered, mostly to myself. "I believe the troll set this creature after us as an amusement. It may be watching right now, having a laugh. The thing that attacked us is part of a race that hates agents almost as much as it likes snacks." Nick let his hands drop now that the threat was past. I looked over my shoulder towards the tunnel. The lights were still on, but I believe the troll was watching, and I hoped that it was disappointed in the outcome. After I heard the tires screeching, I knew the troll had won in the end. It distracted us from our job. I cursed again and started off as fast as my legs would carry me towards the road. The two homeless men were still sleeping and somehow not woken up by the brief fight. If the tires belonged to the white van, we wanted to find out if it could have taken someone else we didn't see before. I ran right into the middle of the empty street, looking around, trying to see what car made those noises. My heart sank when I spotted the back of a white van peeling off down the straight road, and we didn't have any means of going after it. It turns out we didn't need to go after it. Nick ran so fast he was unable to stop in the middle of the street. He skidded to a stop and needed to do a double back to where I stood. If the situation wasn't so dire, the sight would have been comical. Again, his hand went to his waist and, this time, he drew his sword. In one lightning-fast movement, he drew back the blade and sent a thin shockwave of destruction down the street towards the van. A burst of wind blasted my face, and I needed to raise my hand so I didn't see the impact, but I heard it. A terrible crashing sound came from down the street. It was so loud it hurt my ears, even from a distance. When I lowered my hands, my jaw dropped. Nick had cut the van in half, each side fallen away from each other. One crashed into a parked car, the other went forwards a few more feet just to slam into a telephone pole. The side that hit the parked car tipped over on its side, revealing the inside of the van, where a man dressed in rags lay limp. He was tied down to the van wall, ensuring he was the only one that was safe from the crash. I ran behind Nick, who kept running to go check on the driver. Along the road was debris scattered from the now split van, and at first I assumed they were tools. I was so concerned on getting the man from the destroyed van, I didn't focus on them. When I knew he was knocked out and not dead, I started to look around, unsure of what I was seeing. Saws, hammers, drills, bear traps, and more littered the road. Along the walls were more of the dangerous-looking objects, and I finally clued in to what I was seeing after I spotted the stains on some of the tools. The van was a place of torture. All of these instruments were chosen to inflict harm on a human. I thought back to the bodies of the 8 men, and everything then made sense. We were never looking for a supernatural creature. I was careful as I got the man untied and got him onto the road. Nick pulled the driver from the front of the crushed van, face bloody and nose broken. He might have been saved by the airbag. Sirens then started coming closer as dogs barked around us. The crash had attracted lots of attention, and I wasn't sure I knew how to explain it to the police.
The driver is alive. I'm not certain if he'll make it through.
Getting down on our level, Nick took off his jacket to let the man we'd rescued use it as a pillow until the ambulance arrived. I looked around, still unable to believe this entire time we were looking for a serial killer. The state of the bodies looked beyond anything a human could do. I now know that was foolish. Back then in my mind, crimes like this only happened in the podcast I listened to while staking out a cheating husband. It never felt real, and being suddenly forced to face the horrors of my own kind made me feel in a way I couldn't describe. How are we going to explain all of this? I asked and looked around at the sudden chaos. The same blank expression on his face was my response. Just as flashing lights started to colour the street, Nick shrugged.
I have no idea.
Well, that did not make me feel better in the slightest. I was grilled for hours over what happened. They separated us. I was smart enough not to say a word no matter how stressed I felt. And after 6 hours, a female lawyer came into the room. She simply gave the detective a sheet of paper, and then I was free to go. I sent Nick a text the moment I got my phone back, and his response was, "I'll talk to you later." I waited for 2 more days until he sent me a message asking if I could meet him in a park near my office. I wasn't busy, so I went, wanting to know the outcome of our case. He looked terrible, as if he hadn't slept since the last time we saw each other. He still gave me a wave when I walked over to sit on a bench beside him. He explained the corporation cleaned up the mess, making it look like a regular accident. The man who was driving was in fact the killer, and because he used different tools and even some jaws of dead animals, the bodies looked as if they were torn apart by something not human. And Nick fiddled with his phone, and a few seconds later, mine pinged. A payment of $1,000 was deposited into my account. I'd honestly forgot about the money because of everything that had happened.
This was all I was left over from doing a big cover-up. I'm sorry, it's barely anything. Because the case had a human culprit, my job didn't want to pay anything. I put my foot down on that, saying you should get something for your time.
I stared at my phone, knowing this was pretty good for a single day of working. Nick was acting as if that amount was chump change, though. He did mention bigger cases paid up more, but I had no clue just how much more that was. Nick, you know $1,000 is a pretty decent amount of money, right? Some people don't even earn that in a week. He stared at me, that blank expression, saying something I didn't want to read into. This dang bastard was probably richer than I would ever be in my life, because he wasn't human and could fight monsters for a massive profit, all the while being unaware of that fact. If he wasn't so nice, I would be upset. His phone rang. He answered it in a language I'd never heard before. Soon, he hung up and apologized, saying he needed to leave for work again. Call me any time if you have a job you think I can handle. I might be useful for something, someday. I let out a chuckle and thought I spotted a hint of a smile upon his face. He promised if anything came up, he would send me a message. Soon, I was left alone in the park on a beautiful sunny day, but unable to really appreciate the weather. I kept staring down at a new payment fit in a dark pit in my stomach. The images of those 8 men came flashing into my mind. Thanks to Nick, they got their names back, and because he cared, there would be no more victims from the killer. I knew it wasn't enough. Things like this could keep happening. Yet again, I felt useless. I searched for the website of the shelter where we asked for names a few days ago. Finding the right page, I could easily donate my 1 day of work to the shelter. I knew it really didn't solve the overall problem, but at least it might help a few people for a little while. I stared at the charity receipt email, telling myself the reason for the donation was for tax deductions at the end of the year. I placed my phone back into my pocket to get ready to head back into my little office. I needed to learn more about the supernatural creatures and become a better contract worker for the bigger jobs. After I made sure my sister was set, I had some other ideas for the funds I would be risking my life for. I might not do much overall, but as Nick has said, efforts are never really wasted. Wow. Certainly another one. Wow. Well, I told you it was an intense one. Absolutely chest-pounding and totally refreshing. What a magnificent and mysterious start to this series. And from our good friend 02321 from over on Reddit, No Sleep. Many chapters to this series, guys and girls, so I hope you bear with us as we try to get at least 1 or 2 a week up. Of course, as ever though, please do take a second to head over to the link, of which I'll leave in the description box below. That'll take you over to 02321's Reddit profile, where you can definitely lose yourself for a good few hours with the awesome content of stories and poems. As ever though, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help both the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid Crew. A big welcome to all the brand new Cryptid Crew members. I hope you're enjoying the backlog of content. And we'll be trying to update that monthly as we get back into the swing of things and regular schedule. All you beautiful subscribers, keep your notification bells on as well. Plenty of live streams and re-listen parties coming up over the next few weeks and months as we try to engage with you more and bring back the old school feel of the channel. One big happy family, full of cryptid craziness and bad dad jokes. I hope you're all well and happy and had a fantastic week at work, school, or whatever it is that you do, and your family and friends are well. But above all, guys, remember, be safe, not sorry. Without his face changing, he grabbed the back of my shirt to drag me back when I looked over to Nick, heart beating. Even after everything I wanted to thrust this monster. Beside ourselves, to